Hawaii residents and small businesses were having a tough time making ends meet before the government shutdowns, before the coronavirus. Now, with only select businesses starting to reopen and the state's #1 industry on hold, tens of thousands face an uncertain financial future. How do you plan when you have so little? How do you qualify for a loan you don't know you can repay? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Laurie Amada. Well, shopping malls and low-risk retail stores have been given the green light to reopen with safety guidelines in place, but who's going to go shopping now? Residents may be tightening their wallets, and no tourists means no tourist spending. So while government loans are helping thousands of small businesses in Hawaii stay afloat or trying to, other businesses are teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. And we're not just talking about traditional brick and mortar stores. Our panel tonight includes a UH economics professor, a local representative from the U.S. Small Business Administration, a financial planner, and the director of the State Department of Agriculture. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you're going to find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. All right, now to our guests. Carl Bonham is the executive director of the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, also known as UHERO. He is also a professor of economics and a member of the State House Select Committee on COVID-19. Jane Sawyer is the district director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, a position she's held since 2009. Her office also oversees small business development centers in Guam and American Samoa. Michelle Tucker is a certified financial planner and a registered investment advisor. Her companies provide estate planning, legal advice, tax advice, and investment advisory services. And Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser oversees the State Department of Agriculture. She was a third-generation manager of Mikilua Poultry Farm in Waianae, West Oahu, prior to her appointment. So thanks so much, all of you, for being here. As you can see, we're a little separated, but we're all here to have a healthy discussion about what's going on. So Carl, I think I'm going to go ahead and start with you. So let's just kind of maybe go a little broad here and talk about we're talking about economic recovery, how we're looking at that. This is your wheelhouse when things are just changing constantly. What kind of picture can you paint at this point? And what kind of timeline are you sort of throwing out there?
So I think it was a week and a half ago, we released a blog post that goes through a set of assumptions for possible recovery scenarios. The bottom line is that no one can
You're not
predict.
using the word projections at this point.
Well, yeah, these aren't forecasts. These are, these are logically thought out assumptions about when the local economy. So, for example, when we released that, we said the local economy will begin to reopen in May. That was our assumption, and it will be gradual. It will take some time, and we in our baseline, our sort of middle of the road scenario, we said that let's assume that we begin to reopen to tourism at the end of July, the fourth week of July, and it's very, very small, and it gradually ramps up throughout the year. And then we did a optimistic scenario that essentially was, well, what if we really get the virus under control nationally and globally? We have a federal policy on testing, and policy really works, and the science helps us, and we ramp up testing capability, and people begin to feel safe about traveling. And then that scenario has roughly same opening, but a much, much larger recovery of tourism. And then a pessimistic one is one where you really don't get the virus under control maybe until late fall, and tourism just barely starts back up in the fall. And those generate very, very different results. Right. And so we laid out these scenarios, and the sort of pessimistic part about this is even in the baseline, even with recovery, when we included the effects of the PPP loans and everything else, all the other policies that we know about, and we still end up with a very elevated unemployment rate at the end of the year.
So when you're looking at, say, just taking a slice of that, and I feel like every question I ask you is like, well, it could be this scenario, this scenario, this scenario. So when you look at tourism then, and you look at how that's impacting our businesses here, not having that industry be robust like it is typically, what are you sharing with local businesses? What are you, how are you talking to them about how they need to prepare themselves for these different scenarios if tourism doesn't return until July or August or toward the end of the year?
So mostly what we're doing is we're providing scenarios and telling them what we think is most likely, and we tend not to give business advice, right? My sort of flippant response is, I don't need to give a business person advice, right? They're the business person. They're the ones who are in the trenches, but they do need information, and that's really that's our role, is to provide the best information and analysis and policy advice. So we do, we have produced several policy pieces. We released one earlier this week that by Sumner LaCroix and Jim Mack that suggested that the state really needs to figure out how to essentially salvage the education of graduating high school seniors and even people who are graduating from UH this year, and figure out a way to help them to go back to school so that they're not just sitting at home, with no job and no prospect for going to school. And so really we're focused on information analysis and policy recommendations.
So as people kind of sort of wade through the different scenarios and deal with it as best as they possibly can, they're looking to entities like the Small Business Association to cover them financially in some shape or form. And we were talking about, in the break room, really wrapping your brain around not only putting yourself out there to try and get those loans, trying to get those finances, trying to get some assistance, but then trying to decipher what is out there and how does it have an effect on, that's something that I think isn't as discussed is, okay, yeah, quick, we got these loans that we could possibly apply for, but wait a minute, I didn't realize that meant that I can no longer then get this loan or this type of assistance. Maybe let's I think I'm asking you a multi-phase question there. Maybe we could start with some of the big ones that are out there right now and what's happening. I think the biggest one is the Paycheck Protection Program that's talked about a lot. Maybe start with that and tell people what's been happening.
Okay. There are so many resources that are being mobilized and not necessarily in really well-planned, well-thought-out phases, but there is such a sense of urgency to kind of match the great uncertainty of this huge situation we find ourselves in. So the Paycheck Protection Program loan came up because it was really to help small businesses sustain themselves through what we hope would not be an extended pandemic, and also help employees stay on the payroll, not have to resort to unemployment to keep their benefits intact.
And explain to people, just really quickly, remind people how that loan works and how,
Sure.
What the
with as much as we might know about that, because there's a lot of money, a lot of urgency went out because it is a very, very unusual, unprecedented plan. This is a program that Congress has funded through the CARES Act that works with our 7A lenders. So most of our local banks and credit unions are already approved SBA lenders, and they've agreed to process these loans for customers, new customers, with 100% guarantee from the SBA. It takes no personal guarantee and no collateral from a small business owner. You have to be a small business owner with under 500 employees who reside in the United States, in Hawaii, for most of our purposes and the size of the small businesses we have here. And the loans can go up to $2 million, or $10 million, and they're directed primarily to help you meet payroll and also some other costs like a portion of your rent, mortgage interest, some of your utilities, And over the immediate, from the time you get your disbursement of your loan funds from the bank, it will cover an 8-week period where if you use those proceeds for that purpose, then the loan is forgiven. If you aren't using it, at least 75% of those proceeds for payroll costs, and those are factored in with figuring how much of a loan you would get from your bank with the SBA guarantee. So you can roll some of those unexpended funds over into a term loan that you would pay 1% for up to 2 years. So some of those funds may be available for some of the other costs that a small business might be experiencing.
And my mind was a little blown earlier when you were talking about just how many requests have come in.
Oh, it's been phenomenal, and the banks were working their people in shifts and late into the night. And in the round one, we got almost 12,000 loans funded for over $2 billion just in Hawaii. And I would have to say, normally in a good year, we may make 300 or 350 loans to small businesses, and this was over 11,533 just for
the
Hawaii.
state of Hawaii.
Nationally, it was 1.66 million loans.
Wow.
For over $342 billion.
And now again, was this just the first round or the combined?
That's the first round.
Only the first round. So now we're to the second round, because the first round ran out of money for that, right? Second round, I think a lot of people right now are not sure what's happening because I think they applied and they don't know what, and I think there's talk of, has this money now run out? What's the situation?
With the PPP loan, there are 2 loan programs. So there is the Payroll Protection Program loan, and then there also is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan is funded directly through SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance, and that one more or less debuted early in March. But it also being the first one, and SBA runs a little disaster operation that usually responds to physical disasters. The Kilauea, or doesn't seem little when it's happening to you, but the Kilauea eruptions, the Kauai floods, Hurricane Iniki, across the country, the California fires. So usually they're declared by a singular area or a number of counties. This program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, rolled out pretty quickly over the course of 10 days nationally. So it received over 5 million applications, and the demand exceeded the system's ability to process, to accept the applications, and also the funding that is available. So that has slowed and stalled that process significantly. But we are finally starting to see a lot of those advances come through, and also about 19,000, and we've also had about over 300 loans approved. So those advances could all turn into some type of loan for those small businesses. And
So for folks, just be a little patient. If they're wondering, what happened? I put my application
so many people are so
ago.
tired of hearing be patient, but that is the real remedy and the best prescription right now. Be safe, be patient.
So in the first round, I think we received $2.2 billion in loans. I don't know what the numbers are for the second round yet. I haven't seen those. So we took that information and we worked with local banks to get detailed information and did an estimate of the number of jobs that could be supporting in the state. And the estimate that we came up with was I believe 165,000 jobs. Now, not all of those people were originally laid off, but many of the jobs that are being supported are bringing people back on to the payrolls, right? And so, in principle, in May and June, we should begin to see some reduction in unemployment and eventually
because they'll have some of that loan money.
Because they have to hire those people back. Now, they won't necessarily be working, depends on the nature of the business, but so that should help. And then the question is what happens in July when those are over, and will we get an extension? Will the tourism economy start to reopen, and will we be able to offset the end of the PPP program with growth?
So I want to get
Exactly. Yep.
some of our other guests. So turning from, trying to get some funds coming in to trying to keep your funds from floating away in the stock market or wherever else. So protecting your finances. So Michelle, I mean, I think you've come across a lot of clients who have been smart and been able to kind of control their finances or get it organized enough to be able to maintain. But there's a lot of people out there that are still very, very concerned about what's happening with the stock market, what to do with their 401k. Is this a situation where, despite penalties, they should pull out? What are the sort of, as Carl was talking about, different scenarios that you're sharing with people and how they have to think about their finances right now?
Well, I
Their
think
investments, I should say.
yeah. I think they have to think of their life in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 year periods, and I actually condition my clients to expect a large drop in their portfolio, and it could happen at any time, and it would be unexpected, and it's going to happen. It's happened 5 times in the last 50 years. This is number 6, and we're going to be here for 10, 20 more years, and it's going to happen again. And that kind of comes with the territory of investing in stocks, which is very important because long term, that's the only thing that's going to grow and take care of you 10 to 20 years from now. So you have to look at, how much are you planning to preserve for the long-term life, and how much do you need right now, particularly right now, because this is an extraordinary time, and sometimes, maybe you had thought that you had enough safe money to get through, but now, with these extraordinary times, have deprived us of resources we never thought we'd lose. So, right away, you have to just buckle down and ask yourself, what is my bare bones budget? And since we don't know, I have to say we were very pleased, our company was very pleased to get one of these P loans and one of these $10,000 grants. But what we really want is to be told how to open the business. Because it's 6 weeks from now, now we're already 3 weeks into the period of time when we have to spend the money, and then we're supposed to be through the crisis. So what we need is what is contact tracing and what is testing, and how do we bring that to our business so that 4 weeks from now we will be able to invite our customers back. So all of us, this is very uncertain, so you do have to ask yourself, once again, even if you had the best plan, you have to ask yourself, what has changed in my life, and where am I going to get the money to cover the next year, 2, 3, up to 5 years, because the typical downturn takes 5 years to be over, for the market to come back. So that's the bond piece, the safe money, the CDs and money market, and
Making sure you have some liquidity.
have that, but don't just throw away all your stocks. Just know that you don't need them for the next 5 years, and then rest assured that that's probably, of course, you have to look at how you put your portfolio together too.
Yeah, that was a question from
But
Marcus.
I just think you need stocks, you need bonds, and they're for different purposes, and now you have to reevaluate whether what you have is suitable.
Yeah, just to make sure I get a question from Marcus from Manoa, which you answered to a degree. Is it better to put more or less into your 401k right now? And I think to your point of, what's your situation?
Well, it's situational again. Right now, if you don't need the money, it's absolutely, this is a great time to buy. Everybody that's selling,
right.
somebody's buying that. So the person that says this is terrible stuff, the other person saying this is great stuff. So you're selling low and somebody else is buying low. Well, which one's the better position to be in? So if you can afford to buy now and you have the time, this is not money you're going to need to pull out for 10 years, don't stop saving for retirement. So it's situational. You do, of course, now, people who thought they would never lose their job might have lost their job. And so you have to think of the unthinkable. So, okay, my 6-month emergency fund maybe should be a year or more. And so be more conservative than you were before, less optimistic. reevaluate your priorities. What is important to you? Do you really, you don't really have to travel. You don't really need a better car. Or, just really look at your situation again. And there's no one size fits all.
Well, I want to make sure that I get to Phyllis here because we touched on our largest industry, tourism, but agriculture is such a huge and important industry here in Hawaii too. And I recall a show we had a couple weeks ago. We were talking to the food bank and thinking about the food supply and thinking about, I think they were having a drive where they had a lot of farmers dropping off fresh produce. And so many people are wondering about what is happening with farmers right now. What is happening with their crops? How are they able to look at what's coming down the road? Just sort of give us a sense as to what's been happening with farmers right now and their business.
Well, in our industry, there's a diverse group of business models. We have very small farmers, and then we have those that have scale that can do all various parts of the food distribution chain. So they can sell to supermarkets, they can sell to restaurants, they can sell to hotels. And then we have the in-between, the medium-sized farmers that do farmers markets, like the smaller guys. Smaller people like to focus on doing direct consumer sales. So I think those that were dependent on the restaurant industry to get the best price point, they experienced significant loss in their markets. We heard a range from anywhere from 40 to 60% of their markets were affected by the stay-at-home. And so initially in mid-March, when the farmers market, some of them were closing down because the landlords of the properties where the farmers markets were situated didn't want to, I guess, assume any risks with the coronavirus. So in that instance, there was like immediate chaos because farmers had crops in the field. They had harvested for the weekend farmers markets, and all of a sudden they couldn't sell their produce. They don't have adequate cold storage, so they were scrambling to see how they could get in the immediate market for it. What we did, our department, because of the Farm to State initiative that was started by the Senate, we were working with the state institutions to see if they could take some of that produce that all of a sudden had no home for. So I must acknowledge that the Department of Public Safety that operates our correctional facilities, immediately they were able to buy, some of that produce the first weekend where the farmers markets were starting to close down. They've consistently been a good partner, and we've been able to move several thousand pounds of anywhere from ulu, tomatoes, beans, type of produce through the correctional system. And, we're also seeing that the small farmers have been able to pivot. They've been able to adjust and get involved with their organizations to do CSA, community-supported ag, food boxes. The farmers markets were eventually opened. Are
those officially open at this point? I think I'd heard something about that recently, about the farmers markets being allowed to open, at least to a degree.
Yes. So farmers, being entrepreneurs, they can be quite resilient and creative. So those that were able to open up, they adapted to the social distancing requirements. So they
are open?
Yes.
Or does that depend per county?
I think it varies across the counties. But
Is there someplace people can check, by the way, to see if the markets are open in their area?
we have a website that has a listing of the farmers markets, and you can also go and check. I would say check with the counties also to see if they have a listing.
Okay.
But they also started doing a lot of online orders, and there's been a lot of press coverage on the farm to car concept. So I know that not only in this county on this island, but there are drive-through farmer market pickups popping up on other neighbor islands too. So so the small scale family farms have really pivoted, and they're really adapted to getting their produce through food hubs or through some kind of aggregation, selling direct to the consumer.
So I do want to get back to that as far as kind of moving forward, how we can kind of how this can be sustainable for the farmers. But I got to get some of these questions, and some of it swing back to you, Jane, talking about the PPP. Not surprising. So let's maybe start with this one from Miho from Honolulu. He says, if you have a PPP, can you also qualify for a PUA? And for those who don't know, what is a PUA?
I think the PUA is the new unemployment program for sole proprietors and
Okay.
independent contractors that just opened up last week or is just opening up now. So I think you may be able to, or if not immediately, it would be in a couple of weeks.
As
So
far
it's
as
not
to
it's
apply
not
for
an
both.
it's not an SBA program, but you may be able to do both.
Okay.
But
I think there'll be a delay.
I think I heard muffled in my ear.
if that's unemployment benefits, though, if you use the PPP to,
It would be 8 weeks out.
yeah, I mean, you can't collect unemployment benefits and
And
use the PPP to
be on a
employed.
payroll.
Right.
Because technically you're on your own payroll then.
Okay. Here's another one from, I think it's from Eric. From my understanding, a big problem with SBA loans was that small was defined as businesses with 500 employees or less. This includes pretty large companies.
Yes.
They got a lion's share of the money, at least the first time around, right? I think that's what kind of sort of sucked it up. Are there remedies for this, is what he's asking. Small businesses left with nothing is kind of his sort of takeaway at this point.
I think that we've seen some of that adjust itself. And
What do you mean by that?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by that, adjust
Well,
itself?
I think that some of the larger companies, particularly some of them that got a lot of media coverage, were larger national chains and publicly traded companies who now understand a little bit more that should you have assets available, even though we don't have the credit elsewhere test that normally applies to SBA, that a lot of these companies have returned their money. And the responsibility is on the borrower to certify that they need these funds to operate. They actually are jeopardizing their forgiveness. So a lot of the funding has come back to the government coffers from some of the larger businesses. And in the second round, we are seeing many, many more loans and smaller average loan size. It's probably around $70,000 to $80,000, $100,000 as the average loan size that does fit the profile of a smaller business with a smaller payroll, a smaller number of employees. And we are seeing independent contractors, sole proprietors come in and getting those loans that could carry them, for $30,000 or $25,000 for some of their own pay and also some of their overhead expenses.
I do want to switch up a little bit here, but I'm going to throw one more at you. This is from Ann in Manoa. What is SBA doing for 1099 workers? What about their benefits? Can you address that?
They are looking at those plans, and they came out with some new guidance on exactly how they're looking at calculating those monthly payroll costs. So if they go to, say, treasury.gov or sba.gov, there is new guidance that came out perhaps about a week ago that addresses how to use your last year's tax returns and those documents to justify your costs, and how you will really look at whether you're using your net or your gross to determine your payment amount, your loan amount.
All right, let me pivot here a little bit, and maybe this might go to you, Carl, but some of these questions I think we're getting may not fall right within your wheelhouse, and if you can't answer them, that's okay, but maybe within your circle of conversations, you might have some insight, so I'm couching that one a little bit. So DeGray from Maui asking, if the state ramps up tourism, will passengers be tested for COVID-19 prior to flying to Hawaii? So I know it's not right in your wheelhouse, but I don't know if that's part of the conversation.
A great question, and I don't know the answer to that because right now nobody knows the answer to that. You may have heard that Representative Case suggested that just a day or so ago. Right now, these are just things we're talking about. So the first problem is, do we have enough tests, right? And are they accurate enough? And when we have enough tests nationally, the first place they're going to go is to frontline healthcare workers and to hopefully people working in grocery stores and meatpacking plants and everywhere else before we ever get to the point where we're talking about using this for leisure travel. But these are things that have been proposed. There have been proposals that everybody, before they get on a plane, a day or so before, will get tested. And other possibilities are testing here. There's a fair amount of disagreement about the use of tests. There are many national suggestions that we test widely as a method of reopening the economy. There certainly are medical professionals here who are arguing that you don't use tests for that purpose, that you only use them in a clinical setting, and they're not intended to be used as this wide screening. So the alternative is very intensive screening, right? So Department of Transportation is supposed to be standing up the ability to do temperature, thermal readings at the airports. So you're checking for symptoms, you're screening, you're testing anybody who's symptomatic, and you're contact tracing, right? So everyone they've been in contact with is checked. And you have a very robust public health system to manage the risk, right? There is risk, but we simply have to manage it while we reopen.
And that was a big, I think, part of the Mayor Caldwell's press conference today, talking about the push now for tracking. If we're going to go there, if we're going to start thinking about reopening and bringing tourists back in, what is do we need to be pushing a protocol so we have that in place before we get to bringing tourists in?
We are working, that is being worked on, it's being discussed every single day in the various committees. I think we're very close to having a plan that will just sort of not necessarily describe all the details behind the testing and tracking. There are some new agreements some partnerships between Department of Health and the university that I think will begin to use university, I'm pretty sure it's nursing students, to essentially allow for to be trained and then allow for the possibility of a very, very rapid increase in the number of contact tracing staff that you would need as you begin to see new outbreaks. And we will see new cases, and we need to be ramped up and prepared for that.
Let me get to this question. This is from Nadine. The need will likely last longer than, she's talking about PPP. The need will likely last longer than 8 weeks. How can a business owner utilize this loan more judiciously rather than spending 75% of the loan in a short period of time? I think this is a question for you, but it really is also a question for Michelle as far as a business owner. So this is her finances. How is she looking at this opportunity?
I think that's an important question, and I think it really takes a small business owner to go through and really carefully look at their financial situation and assess that. So yes, it's a great question for Michelle as well. They really need to take a look at their cash flow, where they are right now, where they were perhaps this time last year, and to determine how much debt they should take on I mean, yes, 1% on a loan that they can extend over a 2-year period may be a good thing for them to look at. The 75% is what really cues the forgiveness. So can they assume some of that debt at a good rate, and what is the return if they open sooner, bring all their employees back? So it's a very personal and individual thing, one business to the next. What are they looking at doing? How are they going to operate? Do they know their customers? Are their customers going to come back and come through the door? Would they pivot and look at alternative ways to buy their products or services? So it can be very, very different for each business. And it may be that they decide they don't want to keep the whole amount of the loan. They may decide they can go with less forgiveness and assume a little bit more debt, because if they use some of the proceeds for other kinds of uses other than employees and just that overhead, or extend the term that they want to carry that, it won't be completely forgiven, but they still can have a little bit of capital that they can use as working capital to carry them forward.
Do you want to add to that, Michelle?
Well, it's really hard, because when we first learned of this crisis, the thinking was it wouldn't last very long, and the program was set up to encourage us to keep all our employees on payroll, and if we did that, then it would be forgiven. And if we didn't do that, then some of it would be forgiven, but then other part of it wouldn't. And so you are faced with this urge to, keep everybody working. And everybody wants that. And that's the best for the business if indeed it opens up in 8 weeks and it's over. I mean, that was great. But if it goes on a bit, then you would have thought differently. Maybe you would have thought, let's just keep a skeleton crew on, and we can, we can continue the business, keep it open, maybe not on the same size and scale, but there's no customers anyway, so why are we keeping everybody here? It's really, really tough, that uncertainty factor. In hindsight, who knows, some of us will regret we did, but because there's no blueprint for this kind of crisis, we just kept everybody working, and we're going to be forgiven for the loan, and then we'll have to borrow from somewhere else to keep it going, and then maybe the second phase will scale down and keep everybody on 3/4 time or something like that. But we need customers. That's what we all need, is a blueprint for bringing people back into the businesses.
And even as they bring people back into the business, they can give them different kinds of assignments. You may be changing their work. Sometimes the employees won't want to come back, and you may shift to find that you want a different skill set. Maybe I am going to have to go to selling more, focusing more on online sales, or I need to not have this entire sales staff in the facility. Maybe I need to have them telemarketing or doing something different. So it may be a time where you reevaluate or retrain. There are lots of training programs that are available, so you can still be productive with some of the employees, but it may be looking at it a little bit differently.
And speaking of shifting businesses, some of the questions coming in for you, Phyllis. This is Rich from Kahului saying agriculture should consider working with schools more and provide them with foods and produce. Are they? And is that changing now because of what's happening, because of the supply, or?
Well, right now the schools aren't fully in session.
I think some are providing home lunches.
Take
is that
grab
correct?
and go food.
Yeah.
But not all the schools are, serving meals like they would normally be doing.
Right.
But I know that the Department of Education has a 10-year plan to increase the amount of locally produced food on their school plate.
Do you think this is going to have an impact on that, on how that's planned?
We're hoping, and we do meet. We have met with several departments that do have responsibilities to feed children or patients or inmates, and we're all working together to see how we can get these institutions to buy more local. For what we've learned also from this COVID situation is that with the stay at home, be safe at home, people are cooking more at home. And with the restaurants only being allowed to do takeout and not so dining in, people are buying more local. So and our farmers, have seen that there has been some increase in a certain local produce. So we're hoping that once the economy gets back, people will continue to remember to buy local. There's a need for more markets for our farmers here. We learned that you can't depend on the tourism sector to be there. We need to have more diverse markets for our farmers. So consumers were to buy more local, pay a little bit more on the price point, that'd be awesome. And we're always looking to see if the state can be a really big consumer for our local farmers.
Let me get to this comment here because we do need to get to a few more of these. So this is a comment. I'm going to throw it to you first, but then I think, Carl, would be natural for you to respond as well. So comment is, I recently spent 2 weeks in the Makaha Waianae area. The community was very calm and the local produce was wonderful. The state should focus more on agriculture than tourism. And this has been a discussion for quite some time. Do you want to respond to that comment? I'll start with you first, Phyllis. No doubt that's been a discussion for a long time.
Well, there's so much potential for agriculture. It has, in order for it to grow, farmers here, the industry needs capital. And so whether it's going to be private investment into agriculture or if it's going to be government investment into agriculture, we also need a skilled workforce, and there's a need for improvement in the infrastructure for agriculture. You can have a lot of agricultural land, but if you don't have access to water, you don't have access to utilities, it's not affordable. You can have the best soil quality, but if you don't have all those other keys to success, it's very difficult.
And to you, Carl, too, this is also a related question from Michael from Maui, saying, from an economic standpoint, are there ways we can lessen our state's dependence on tourism? Again, a discussion that we've had for some time.
Yeah, so let's start with the ag question. So like my friend Richard Holloway says, if the farmer makes money, then the farmer will farm. And there is a role for, and farming is part of the culture and the history of Hawaii. It will not replace tourism, right? That's quite clear. Tourism is our number one export, and it will be our number one export for a long time. Whether it will be nearly as large 5 years from now or 10 years from now, or what it will look like is very much a question. It's one that actually we released a blog. Jim Mack and Frank Haas wrote a blog about rebuilding and remaking a smart tourism market for Hawaii that looks different and manages the destination very differently.
Give me a couple bits as to what you mean by a smart tourism industry.
Well, so if you think about what's happened in Hawaii over the last 5 years or so, we set new records for the number of visitors every single year. And how did we do that? Well, we didn't build hotels and timeshares, right? We rented out our homes, not me, but my neighbors. And how did they do that? Well, they did that using technology, right? By marketing their homes to people all over the world. And we need to use technology to manage our resources. So for an example that's used in the blog, Hanauma Bay is, the management of Hanauma Bay has often been held up as a success story, because if you go back far enough, Hanauma Bay was being overrun. Now we just shut the parking lot every day. But that's a kind of crazy way to do this. Why aren't we using apps on smartphones to schedule when you can come into Hanauma Bay. We're beginning to see this on Kauai, and we're seeing it to visit Haleakala, right? But we need to have this statewide at a variety of destinations, so you get a better experience for tourists. But also maybe we're also tracking where they are, right? I mean, with the right privacy protections in place. But we not only can we manage the destination, but we could also think about diverting tourists away from high concentration areas, and also think about whether we can use this as part of the effort to manage the risk associated with the virus.
And as far as agriculture, kind of just making sure
And you can also be sending them to farmers markets and to experiences, the agricultural tourism. There's a whole variety of different things. But getting back to ag, the state's role there really needs to be one of facilitating and helping with investments that individual small farmers can't make, right? So helping with the water infrastructure, for example. And
Nadine asking subsidizing for local farms, which we do to a degree, depending on.
So why we have subsidies for some industries, but as a general principle for economic development, that's not the best way to proceed for state governments, policymakers to decide which industry to subsidize. What they should be doing is helping with, it's still a subsidy, but helping with the infrastructure that is necessary for businesses to thrive. And so an example of that in tourism is building the convention center, right? So that's something that individual hotels aren't going to do, and individual retailers can't do. And so same thing goes with farming. Individual farmers can't provide all the water infrastructure for an ag park, but the state can step in and do that.
So here's kind of a more general question from Terrence. Actually, no, it's a more specific question. How long do you think, in your estimation, will it be for, say, nonprofit venues, say Hawaii Theater, various other theaters to open to the public? How would these venues survive if they can't have shows for the public to view? And is the government doing anything to help these nonprofits? Again, I think this kind of sort of floats around the stew of the sort of the people that you're having discussions with. But not surprising, these questions are coming in too. They're kind of sort of looking at these different businesses that have different business models and serve different populations in different ways. Hawaii Theater. Any thoughts?
That's a really tough one, because it is going to take being able to congregate people, bring people together again. So it is, how do we protect the people who will come to those venues so that we can open them up? How do we help them get over that? I know that I've talked with them at Hawaii Theater about just what it looks like and how long they're going to have to stay closed, what it means, for that operation. And it isn't something that's going to take an 8-week forgiveness loan program to keep their employees going and pay the bills. So they need something, perhaps a special consideration from some other foundation or something, because they really need this problem to be really addressed in how are we doing the tracking, how are we doing the testing, how can they bring their programs back. So it's going to take a much bigger effort.
If you've been to, so not all the shows at the Hawaii Theater are packed, right? So
this is true.
There is room
distancing.
to socially distance at many of the shows, and I think that's probably the first place that you'll begin to see this. Is, I don't know if it's every other row or what the exact model is, but it will happen. And the other thing about that's interesting is that the nonprofits and organizations that rely on public support, not public meaning state, but contributions from the community.
And I'm going to let you continue, but just to kind of eke in another question here related, what is government going to do to support nonprofit organizations, private schools, also universities, a myriad of nonprofit organizations that serve the community but depend on donations to employ staff. I interrupted you a bit, but
that's where I was kind of going with this. So one thing is that in the CARES Act, there is a significant amount of money that really is for nonprofits, and there's money for the university and for other education institutions. And I'm not fully versed on, I mean, it's an incredible incredible collection of programs and funds. But what I was thinking about was just, there's this incredible need that we have in the community right now, particularly around food security and around feeding people, is really sort of priority number one in many ways, and housing and keeping people in their homes. And so, organizations, so for example, the YMCA, right, that relies on donors, and that's, probably shouldn't say this, but that's not quite as important as putting food on the table, right? And so
I think most people would support you on that.
And so, the sort of crisis mode is really directing people's giving to the highest priority items, food and housing.
Well, we don't have a lot of time yet, but I want to make sure I kind of do a little bit of a round robin with everyone. Michelle, when we people are just, whether it be their business or their finances for their family, or just how they think about the potential for loans and whether they should be taking these loans. Anything else you want to make sure that people think about, or that you want to share when we sort of start to move forward with changes that we can't really understand yet? How would you advise them to operate, to think moving forward?
Well, I think that good will come out of this in some way. I mean, so much will change. I mean, all the things we've been talking about local farmers having more dependable business outlets, and managing tourism so that it's sustainable. And there's a lot of, we kind of like it quiet around here. How can this maybe be positive going forward? And so I think everybody has to kind of look at their own lives too and ask themselves, if you don't have enough money to do everything that you hoped for, well, maybe we don't need to do it, to be running around quite as frantically as we have been. Maybe we don't have to travel as much, unfortunately. I mean, maybe we can have a simpler life.
It's important, I think, to kind of sort of look to, how we can sort of think about this in a positive way, to a degree, or at least a functional way. I just want to make sure, only got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure I kind of get around everybody. What's your thoughts, Phyllis, when you talk to farmers, you think about the industry, and you think about them doing what they can to kind of diversify and shift into the new normal, as we all like to say. What thoughts do you want to kind of leave everybody with from the standpoint of the farmers and agriculture?
First of all, I'd like to thank the public, all of those who have supported the farmers, who have gone and bought CSA boxes, food boxes, gone online, tried the farmers' market alternatives by going and doing the farm to car drive-through concept and everything. Because for us, I think it's important that local consumption increases for local food. So if people will continue to buy local, our farmers are trying really hard to stay in business. Our department has supported them with some grants just to keep them going from the end of March through now. And so I think that the positive thing is that we've seen that through this pandemic experience, there has been a rise in support of local consumption, and that's something that's positive, and I think it should continue. And hopefully when people start going back and dining out
They'll remember that
they'll
too.
remember that, to support local.
So we've got about 30 seconds each left for the two of you. And so what else do you want to leave people with when they think about everything they have to think about right now? What's out there? And say it in 30 seconds.
I guess it's kind of take a breath and whatever hat or every hat that you wear as an employee, as a homeowner, as a consumer, to kind of do a clear-headed assessment very calmly of what your priorities are. And then you make adjustments. We're all looking at a new norm, a new world, and some changes. So set your priorities and establish what you want and what it means to you. Go and move forward.
All right. Well, we're a little tighter than that than I thought. So, Carl, but I know you got some great insight in there. So I'm going to have to leave it at that. So before we go, if you're looking for information on COVID-19, please check out our website at pbshawaii.org. And mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight. And we thank our guests, Carl Bonham, the Executive Director of UHERO, Michelle Tucker, Certified Financial Planner and Registered Investment Advisor, Jane Sawyer, District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, and Phyllis Shimabukuro-Geyser, Head of the State Department of Agriculture. Thanks again. All right, next week on Insights, the so-called COVID-19 curve in Hawaii has flattened, we're seeing now, but the danger is far from over. Our panel includes Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, House Speaker Scott Saiki, an infectious disease specialist, and a representative from the Hawaii Restaurant Association. Please join us then. I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui hou.